Welcome to another episode of TBI TMI with your hosts Maria, LMHC, and I'm Zach, CPA, and those are 7 of the 26 letters of the alphabet. So
Wow.
we've only got 19 to go. Let's
Did you do
figure
all
it
that
out.
in your head?
Yes,
That's
I
crazy.
am an accountant. Yeah.
Yeah, but I wouldn't have ever been able to do that so quickly.
Good morning. Thank
Good
you,
morning.
everybody, for joining us today. Hope you
You
like
know,
our
we
theme music.
we've never let people in on our secret that we are recording these at 8 a.m. sharp.
8:30,
And
8 today,
well, today
8:38
we did a
sharp.
later one. And we started in the summer, so it's been probably sunnier for us to do. But I do think my brain is good. I would say my best window is like 11 to 2.
So we're giving people our
I mean, do you feel like you're giving your
second.
best brain? I think it's a more authentic brain, but
I would say probably 11 to 2 is probably accurate as well. Maybe 10 to 1. I don't know. But
yeah,
again, I don't know that we're that different from everybody else. Like 9 to
yeah,
5 is the standard, but are
that's true.
people doing their best work from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.?
That's what I love about you. You're always bringing it back to the reality that normal, not brain injured people,
Neurotypicals, as you might
neurotypicals,
say, NTs.
they're having the same waking up on a Monday, Labor Day. We're laboring for you.
We are laboring.
Yeah. I know I said I was coming in with something, but it's either I am just starting to really notice this and it's been happening forever, or it's new, where brain injury seems to be everywhere. However, sometimes it's not labeled as brain injury. So I just watched this movie called Broke, and there were parts of it that I could go past on the fast forward. But there were parts that were interesting. But basically, alert, this guy is a rodeo cowboy. But he's hitting his head a bunch and has, even before we see him do the rodeo, his head is ringing like tinnitus, which is a brain injury symptom. So between that and then all these movies that are about actual brain injuries, or it's just, I feel like it's I don't know, that should be on our list of to-dos, is watching all of these things, but it's, yeah, being
What are
depicted,
the
not
other
exactly labeled.
what are the movies?
There's a brain injury movie that came out not too long ago, with the lady that was from High Pitch or Perfect Pitch.
Anna Kendrick?
No.
Pitch Perfect?
Yeah.
There's 9 ladies in that movie.
The lady that was the comedy.
Rebel Wilson?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, she is in a movie about it. I don't know. I've just been seeing more stuff, and it's I do think there's a huge population of people living with brain injuries that aren't exactly acknowledging it, which is just, I don't know.
I think this is an interesting topic to bring up, though, in the sense that sometimes researching and exploring and deep diving is useful and makes you feel not so alone. But I think sometimes it also can be more stressful. And how do you know? I mean, I guess, how do you know when to stop or when to push through? I guess if you feel that sort of agita in your belly, maybe move on to something else. There's kind of that not knowing of, educating yourself, but ignorance is bliss, and maybe escapism is more favorable, so you're just watching cartoons or something. I do notice that some of the stuff that I pre-brain injury would kind of provide escapism, maybe like Marvel movies or other types of just world building shows or stuff like that. There's just so much gunfire and flashing lights and quick camera changes that it doesn't really help me anymore. It's more of a frustration than a solution.
Well, I mean, it is stimulating, and it is also sort of the epitome of conflict. People shooting people and stuff of that nature.
Yeah.
I've had that same experience. I also think that for people who, like you, didn't have your skull split open. You didn't maybe get as much care living in the hospital. There is like slightly less perhaps tools or explanations that you're given for why something is feeling bad or weird or you're distrustful or whatever it might be, that oftentimes is a symptom of brain injury, where I think, for example, like me, I still receive some treatment from the original place where I did like the second half of my recovery. You know?
Really?
Yeah.
What kind of treatments are you getting?
Well, so after I had each of my kids, I had really big, well, before I had my first child, I had a lot of symptoms come up of head injury where it was just like it felt not out of the blue, but just like all of a sudden, like the pain was excruciating, my mental health was awful, and just my needs were so much higher. And so I was able to, because I have established care with them 19 years ago, I could get services. And so that was physical therapy, that was working with a pain clinic, that was mental health counseling, and then seeing the doctors there that at the time were not prescribing medication because I was pregnant, but they could have, like the psychiatry. So when I hear you say that, like the looking for answers, I think that's quite common for people that have had multiple concussions or brain injury that wasn't maybe treated with inpatient treatment. And I'm not saying that there aren't questions for people that did have inpatient treatment. Of course there are, but I think there may be slightly less because you have people that are looking out for you still on a medical team, which I don't even know if you have that at this time.
No, I mean, recently new primary care physician, and I talked her through my brain injury, and she was just in shock. And, she read my chart and saw brain injury and asked me about it and was like, what?
Yeah.
So, and that's been, one of the hard things. We have a caller today who kind of talks a little bit about that, who has a history of brain injury and just suffered a concussion. And we'll hear more about that when we get our call. But Maria, you had a topic that you wanted to discuss today. Do you remember what that was? Because the look on your face says you have no idea. And just a reminder to all of our folks, it was just a movie? You just wanted to talk about that movie?
Well, I mean, I guess I can go a little longer, which is just like you were saying, there are these movies like the Marvel stuff, or I know I saw some movie about aliens that Natalie Portman was in a while back.
Annihilation?
Yeah, and it was very distressing to me, and I can't watch those kind of things, like the sounds, the sort of content. But I also think sometimes in these movies where people have like brain injury and they are self-medicating and like whatever else, it is quite uncomfortable for me to watch that too. I finished it, but like I said, I had to fast forward a lot of it. But like the person seems unwell and not getting services. And my heart aches for the amount of people that are dealing with that kind of thing, that really are not getting services and that are really struggling, whether they've never even identified that they have a head injury and it's really impacting the way that they're able to live in the world, let alone the amount of pain that can come from head injury and the other physical issues. I don't know. So yeah, I mean, we can take our call if you feel ready to roll.
Well, no, I mean, I'm sort of thinking about, this subject of watching narrative art forms that deal with the reality of what we're kind of going through day to day, or people like us.
Yeah.
But then, again, the narrative art forms that maybe we just can't really tolerate anymore. I mean, I feel like I never really put two and two together until right now, but I think prior to and maybe it was COVID related too, but prior to my injury, I liked watching horror movies, and I would watch any and every kind of horror movie, and I think something just switched where that level of anxiety and stress watching a movie or a TV show is just too exhausting. And so, I think that's something that maybe we haven't talked about a lot, is kind of the connective forms of being with other people that people with brain injuries can't really enjoy as a result. And kind of feeds into the isolation and loneliness of having a brain injury, and maybe we could provide off the top of our heads some sort of like music or literature or something that might be an alternative form of being able to connect with people on a greater level from like an artistic standpoint.
Mm.
I don't know if it's like going to a museum, where a museum is typically quiet, but then, sometimes you go to a museum and there's so many people in there that it's incredibly overwhelming.
Yeah.
Or going to a symphony or something like that, or
Yeah.
I don't know, because art is such a reflection of culture. How do we connect to our culture when we feel overstimulated and overwhelmed when we participate in those environments? Are there ways for people to still connect and protect?
Yeah, I like that, connect and protect. I think there's a third piece, and I don't want to forget what we're talking about, so you dog ear that, but like also focus can be very challenging post brain injury. So to sit and listen to like play, that's something that I used to do a ton of, or even to keep engaged, keep focused while you're reading or while you're at a lecture. I think all of those things are really challenging once you have a brain injury, to keep your focus. And so that's just another added challenge. And in some ways, that's why people go to things that are stimulating to keep them re-engaging and refocusing. I know I had an experience recently where I did see a really good musical, and Juliet, it's called, and it just was so exciting, and the music was really fun, and it just kept pulling me in. And so I actually, even though that was like in the evening, I think it started at 7:30, and I was super anxious before going there, like nothing could be going right because I was just so uncomfortable about how this was going to go, or would I sleep when I come home, and all these different things. So I'd been planning for it, but I think sometimes that's part of it, is like making a plan and then participating. So really acknowledging when something's super important to you and doing way less that day. I think like you're talking about, choosing to do activities that maybe have the low, like a lot of places are offering low sensory days where they do theater, or like movie theaters. They have times where they don't turn the lights all the way down because it's like a sensory day. There's a lot of stuff like that that's happening, I think, more culturally, that we can lean into. It's really designed for that.
Totally. That's an interesting point. I don't know, do you have much personal experience with ASMR?
No, but I was told that I'd be very good at it. Apparently, I have a good voice for that. Hello, my name's Maria. Do you think it is?
Yeah, I think it is. It's a soothing voice. Well, it's interesting, the growth of that as a kind of a comfort for people. I mean, I've delved into it a little bit, and I think on a surface, I'm like, what is this? This is so stupid, and I don't know where that judgment comes from. We can dive into that if we want to, but it is pretty soothing. And one thing I've noticed in a couple movies that I've seen in the last year is the implementation of ASMR. I don't know if you saw The Substance, but there's a ton of those techniques utilized, and it's a really great movie too. Like homage to so many great horror movies, but poignant and topical and has something to say. But also, really incorporates a lot of ASMR techniques. I also watched The Brutalist, which is like kind of on the other side of the filmmaking spectrum in a lot of ways in terms of subject matter. But even then, there's so many techniques utilized to kind of, I feel like, soothe the audience as they're experiencing these really heavy subjects.
That's cool. That's a really neat idea.
I kind of wonder if ASMR might be something, and would love to hear from people if they think that it's something that helps them kind of calm their heartbeat or their breathing or something on a day-to-day basis.
I think that's so useful, and I agree. Like, your nervous system post brain injury is generally out of whack, and your nervous system is in charge of turning on that parasympathetic nerves So that thing that lets you rest and digest. And so I think you're making such a good point. I'm interested too with other people that have brain injuries or even just family members, caregivers. What are you seeing your TBI survivor? What are you leaning towards to self-soothe? Because I think you're right. It's like, if you love movies, can you watch that movie with a weighted blanket on? Or is it still too intense? Or that feeling of like wanting to be in a group to experience art, is it going to the symphony where there is just a more, not some like rock concert? Like what keeps it more stabilizing and doesn't throw your nervous system off, if that's a way that you can think about it.
Yeah. I would also add, maybe even if you're just watching TV, because the fluctuation of sound is so
Oh my gosh.
jarring. I just watch TV on a low volume with the closed captioning on, which
Yeah.
I think maybe speaks to age as well as brain injury, and you can, still keep up theoretically.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I was going to say too is, in the process, when you were talking about going to the play and the kind of anxiety leading up to it, I think there's something to be said of like pulling the ripcord, so to speak, of here's this thing I want to do. The goal is more so getting there to do it, and if I feel uncomfortable, I'll leave. And like the leaving part is not a failure.
Right.
And if you're not comfortable, and just don't beat yourself up about it. Because I think so much of the hardship is the kind of self-judgment of, I'm not normal, everybody else can do this, but I can't. But that's not really the case. Our circumstances are different.
Right.
Be kind to yourself.
Yeah, no, and I think that's actually really useful. And I'm imagining some of our listeners may have, experiences like that where the anxiety is so strong and then you get there. Whereas, like Zach is saying, if you told yourself from the beginning, like, I'm just going to go, if I need to leave early, I leave early. And that almost feels like you get some relief just knowing that you've made that deal with yourself, that I don't have to stay.
Yeah. And I think if you're going with friends or family or loved ones, communicating that option is important, because I think it can be, I think early days of my own brain injury, I tried going to a concert and told my wife, like, I may need to leave. Like, it may be too much. And one or two shows it was, and I just kind of went into the lobby and I recentered and quieted my brain and waited for her, and it was fine. And she didn't feel like she couldn't enjoy it, and I didn't feel like she couldn't enjoy it. I just needed a break, and it felt like, having that line of communication with her as my partner in that scenario, I thought was really helpful and important, and alleviated any of that stress or anxiety that I was letting her down or letting myself down or anything like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Super important, super useful.
Yeah.
And a good technique. Good tool.
Do we want to?
I think we're on the same page.
Yes. But we need to talk because we're on a podcast, so our ESP needs to be verbalized. Would we like to do our call today?
Hi, my name is Yvonne. My husband experienced a mild traumatic brain injury several years ago. His recovery was prolonged and difficult, and he had many exams and doctor visits that really didn't provide him with much guidance or relief. Very recently, then, he was struck in the head while exercising, and some of his previous symptoms returned. Because of his past experience with the healthcare system, he's reluctant to seek medical care again. But I'm worried about the return of his symptoms and feel that he should be evaluated. So I'm wondering, what guidance would you give to a loved one in this situation? How persistent should I be in encouraging him to get medical attention? And I guess, how can I best be supportive, especially if there may be some elements of PTSD involved? Thanks for any guidance you can share.
That was a great question. And I think something that so many people, so many family members deal with. and so many people with head injuries deal with is like, we were kind of saying that before, trying to get treatment and maybe not having your records or whatever it might be in the system and being turned away. And so then having something like this take place where this person was like re-injured and feeling really skeptical or even scared to go ask for more support or more help from the healthcare provider. So I just want to really honor that this is something I think a lot of our listeners have dealt with. And yeah, I just really feel for this family.
Yeah. Well, what would you say to if this person, this loved one that our caller called in about, if they were a patient and had re-injured themselves, as a professional, what would you tell them?
So I think it's important when I'm working with clients like that, I do understand the sort of challenges of putting your heart out there or even reaching out, making a lot of calls, which are not easy when it comes to the healthcare system. You're waiting on hold forever. They're transferring you to something. Like, to be able to speak with someone is a nightmare for someone with a brain injury. And then finally getting to talk to someone and then potentially turning you down, like, that is a big challenge. So again, just honoring that first chunk. And then I would say making sure that from day one of this situation happening, obviously if it's something that feels emergent, yes, you should go to an emergency room, get support, because there might be things happening that you can't see on the surface that are happening underneath your skull. And so having that looked at, I think, seems really useful and important. And at the same time, if you're going like, oh, it's not that bad, make a list of every single thing you're feeling kind of as you're feeling it. So if you have really bad headache, if you're throwing up, again, those are probably things that you would go to the emergency room for as a person who's already survived a brain injury. But just noting what is going on with you, I think, is super, super important, so that when you do get to your healthcare provider or your urgent care, they can assess you and they can also look at what were the symptoms on the onset.
Yeah. And that almost seems like good advice for the loved one, for the
Right. Yeah.
If the person who suffered the injury is unable to write those down themselves, then maybe tracking that progress or lack of progress is important for the loved one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you're recognizing more agitation as the loved one, making a note of that, because I think oftentimes when you have a head injury, you aren't always the best at narrating your own behavior, that it's much more useful sometimes coming from an outsider to sort of describe what they might see you doing or your behavior looking like.
Because they know kind of what your baseline is and can see how you can't think of the word.
Deviated from that?
Deviated. That was the word. Deviated.
Yeah. I thought, what's a math word? Isn't that a word, math, deviate?
Yeah, I think deviate is somewhere in the math realm.
And I think also the PTSD part that she brings up is really, really important too. Like, I wonder if the spouse is getting mental health support for the PTSD elements, if they're getting any help, couples therapy, not so much based upon something bad in their relationship, but just to be able to talk more freely about both her concerns and him really hearing her. That, I think, is never a bad thing.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I thought was interesting was the reluctance to step toward the healthcare system, because I can think of my own experience of waiting for doctors, and you're just sitting there waiting, and depending on the provider, you might get somebody who's sympathetic and empathetic, or you probably won't. Yeah. Unfortunately, I mean, I have my own bias against, if I'm being quite frank, like, if it's a male doctor, I'm probably less inclined to feel heard. And a male doctor of a certain age, for sure. And so typically I will try to find like a female physician, because I feel like at least I'm being heard. and can kind of feel better taken care of and not like I'm delaying them going to lunch or something. Because in my experience, I mean, I just went to the dermatologist last week and the doctor was late coming into the office and spent a whopping 5 minutes with me.
Wow.
And he was a young man and he was like, no, you're good. It's like, okay, so
Yeah, I just paid you for that.
Yeah, so it's just, I don't know. We could get into healthcare system stuff, and I think we've talked a little bit about good providers and bad providers. And
I also think it's, again, for the listeners and for both of us, we've had way more experience with doctors, just point blank. Like, there are a lot of people that I know in their 40s who have gone to the doctor to have a baby and maybe annually for a checkup, but that is, nothing compared to the amount of times I'm going to the doctor in a year. Right? And so part of that ongoing care, like, if I am not advocating for myself, if I am not going, then I'm not getting help. And there is part of me too that some of the places I've been seen, I had poor care. And so when I go there, it is very uncomfortable and I would say probably triggering some of the traumatic experiences I've had. And so I am now making decisions to go to other doctors that are not in that same building. Maybe it's avoidance and maybe it's me trying to take care of myself.
yeah.
So it's a lot of it is a guessing game, and I just feel my heart hurts for this community because if you don't have someone really helping and supporting you, you have got to be calling and harassing to get seen a lot of times, and that is exhausting. So congratulate yourself if you're doing that, and if you're not, it's understandable.
Yeah. I think it's hard not to feel hopeless.
Yeah.
And it just sucks. There's no kind of two ways around it. You could have the most positive attitude in the world, but you just keep hitting a wall. I think kind of you were talking about inpatient care versus outpatient care at the beginning of our episode today. And it's like a little bit of kind of if like you don't have a plate sticking out of your head, people don't think you're in any pain or something,
Yeah.
And so I feel like we're not providing a ton of tips to people or
I think
solutions.
from the top down, our number one, if you are in a lot of pain, especially in your head, and you have a previous head injury, you should go to the emergency room. Number two, if you don't feel a ton of pain, but you know that you maybe had a blow to your head for any reason, you should be keeping or asking your caregiver or your family member to keep diligent notes of what are my behaviors, what are the things I'm feeling, what are the symptoms that are coming up or that are heightened since that last blow. And then I think number three is you need to continue seeking out and looking for doctors that you feel believe you, doctors or nurse practitioners or PAs that are willing to sit and really hear you out. And I think that that's something we need to talk more about because I think there's something to be said about bringing that same list with you when you go to your practitioner so that you have something clear to say or clear to ask for so that you can actually get your needs met.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point to hit home because I think you kind of need to direct, at this point, you kind of need to direct your practitioner a little bit.
Brain injury is very unknown.
So thank you for those 1, 2, 3 tips. I can think about just all the times I went to the doctor and kind of didn't have that stuff and didn't get anything out of it because I wasn't prepared. And I think the preparation, just, not that you have all the answers, but that you have information to communicate can create a collaborative environment to reach solution-based action.
Yeah, and it's also like depending on who your current physician is, oftentimes they're kind of like a home base. They know a little about everything, but they don't know everything about everything. And so they can get you to the right person or get you the right thing. But sometimes they need help too, being guided to what that might be.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Maria. Thank you, Yvonne, for your call. Thank you, listeners, for listening. I will go through our little end of the call spiel if I can find it. I think I can find it. Like our whole music. We'll cut this out. I can't find it. Maria,
We're
help me.
I do want to say we're excited. We have a another guest coming up, and his name is Daniel, and he's very knowledgeable. He had a severe traumatic brain injury in 1999 and has a lot to share from his both education and research from over the years. That will be a really exciting person to have join us.
Cool. Excellent. We're looking forward to that. And we are excited to be sharing these conversations with you. We're going to be covering a new topic related to TBIs each week, going over listener submitted calls from real life situations. We'll be releasing episodes every Tuesday, so please subscribe so you don't miss any of these fun and important conversations. The content in this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only, not professional advice, and we, the hosts, are not liable for how our listeners use this information. If you need more support, please contact a therapist or your medical provider. If you are having suicidal thoughts, please text 988 for support. Thank you very much, Maria, for your time.
Thank you very much, Zach.
All right. Talk to you next week.
Peace out, Cub Scout.
Bye.